Good morning to everybody at home and welcome to another edition of Political Brew. I'm your host, Donovan Lynch. We're joined by Republican analyst Lisa Keim, Democratic analyst Ken Altshuler. Guys, there's been so much political news this week, you could make a feature film out of it, but we have limited time, so let's get right down to it. Now, we begin at the end of President Joe Biden's time in office. Our viewers will actually be watching this on his last full day as commander-in-chief, capping a career in public office that spans 5 decades. On Wednesday, Biden gave his farewell speech. He celebrated his administration's work around infrastructure, climate change, aid to Ukraine. He also offered a stark warning to the nation. Take a listen to this.
An oligarchy is taking shape in America of extreme wealth, power, and influence that literally threatens our entire democracy, our basic rights and freedoms, and a fair shot for everyone.
So, Ken, I want to start with you as Democratic analyst. Why end on this tone?
He's angry. He's bitter. He resents the fact that he was removed from the campaign. He maybe thinks he could have beaten Trump, which I don't think he could have. And it's not usually what an outgoing president says. You take the high road. And I think he's angry and I think he's bitter. I also think he felt he needed to give a warning to the public about the oligarchy because I think it's a very real fear. So it's he's been there 5 decades. I know a lot about politics. I see what's coming. I'm going to warn you. And he's really angry. And I think it's hard for him. And I think he's sad. I think he's depressed. And all the things we would expect an outgoing president to do who wanted to run another 4 years.
And Lisa, I can't help but think this message against the oligarchy kind of sounds like the anti-elite populism that you'd hear from a Republican candidate. So how do you think this message would sit with a Republican?
It sounds like he's so out of touch with the reality of his own life. He's part of the oligarchy. I mean, the idea that people should pay for their crimes, right? And yet he gave such an unusual pardon to his son with 10 years, 11 months. So clearly defining something for helping him escape. They also have really benefited financially, him and all of his family, from the position that he's had. And when he talks about big tech, it's his administration that was colluding with big tech and silencing Americans, making sure we didn't know the truth about the COVID pandemic and all of these things. So it was so out of touch, also really sad because he's mumbling and slurring, and really it's like he's disappeared already off the scene, and this was not a fine moment, probably one of the worst presidential farewell speeches in our history.
Lisa, Joe Biden didn't have billionaires as advisors, and that's the difference between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. That's the oligarchy, very similar to Putin in Russia. I mean, that's the issue. It's the money, and Zuckerberg is now one of his advisors.
Do you think that there's no money problems with Biden? No money
influence
not a
billionaire.
there?
He's certainly not a wealthy man. We know
what I'm picking up on is you both kind of do see an oligarchy or elite in America. Is that fair to say?
But I do think so.
Well,
yes.
Democrats have certainly presented themselves as elitist, pointed-headed liberal intellects, and that is why Donald Trump's president today. And I think the Democratic Party has been run by the elitists in the Democratic Party, which is why they're going to fail again if they don't change it. But I think Donald Trump is not so much an elitist. He's a populist. But look who he's surrounding himself with.
Lisa, another word?
Just Biden is part of that elitist group, and so that's why I thought it was a little blind. The things he was pointing out in his speech, I feel like really many of them were the issues that he had perpetrated in his presidency.
No, I do want to move on. We have a lot to get to. So now, as the White House changes hands, a major ceasefire deal between Hamas and Israel moves forward more than 15 months into the war. Now, at the time of this taping, Israel's security cabinet has just voted to approve the deal, which would involve the initial release of 33 Israeli hostages in Gaza and allow hundreds of trucks of humanitarian aid into Gaza daily. Both President Biden and President-elect Trump took credit for putting this all into motion. Trump said this epic ceasefire agreement, and I'm quoting, could have only happened as a result of our historic victory in November. And when asked if Biden or Trump should take credit for the deal, President Biden responded, quote, "Is that a joke?" Lisa, I want to start with you. You know, this is happening at, of course, a monumental time, transition between Trump and Biden. What does this ceasefire deal tell us about Trump and his engagement in the world of foreign policy, or what can we expect from his foreign policy moving forward?
America first. That is where he's been incredibly clear. And what's interesting about the way Trump stepped into these negotiations is he came out with one very clear message: all hell will break loose, right? You know, that statement was heard in every language around the world. So the world took notice. And I think his idea of negotiating is not just with leaders, it's to make sure that he puts out a message so simple that everyone starts to get nervous. Like, what is he going to do? So there's a lot of pressure on Hamas, right? I'm certain from everyone within and around their organization. I'm not sure it was a good deal for Israel, that the way that their law is already set up to say they have to get back hostages has given this deal where they have 1,000 terrorists for 33 hostages. That doesn't seem very fair, but it does seem like this is a big win for Trump.
Now, both Biden and Trump can claim a part of making this happen. How would you reflect on Biden's legacy in foreign policy and how it contrasts to Trump, Ken?
Well, I think this is the proposal that Joe Biden, the deal that he worked out last May. And not doing more pressure on Israel may have caused it to not happen till now. And his claim that all hell will break loose means that he would go in and initiate more military intervention. That's not putting America first. But that being said, I think if you ask foreign leaders, they'll say that they felt more comfortable with Joe Biden. They felt more secure with Joe Biden. NATO is not being threatened by Joe Biden. And I think that the foreign leaders are more insecure about a Donald Trump presidency. I think people like Putin are very happy about a Donald Trump presidency.
So I hate to move us along so fast, but this weekend is a big weekend in politics, and Trump returning to Washington for a second term as president. He enters the White House Monday with Republicans holding power in the House. In the Senate, the Supreme Court also has a conservative majority. At his first inauguration in 2017, he spoke of American carnage. He presented the country as going through dark times. He said of the era before he took office, quote, "Politicians prospered, but the jobs left and the factories closed." Lisa, I want to start with you. What are you expecting from his inauguration address in terms of tone?
I think that it will be different. I think he has the feeling of a strong surge behind him. I love his chief of staff. She's brilliant. I expect a new tone also because she is there and helping him, and hopefully he's listening to these advisors. But I really expect him to focus on the issues that brought him to this place. His America First policies are what people care about. They want to see him focus on that and talk about that and bring hope. And I think he's going to come in hard and heavy, I believe, on the message of these are the things I'm going to do. This is what I've said, and here's my plan. And I think that will get not only his supporters excited, but also the people that are maybe not in favor of Trump himself, but are eager to see America become strong again in so many different ways. I think they'll be buying into that as well.
Ken, do you think they'll be buying in?
I agree with almost everything you said. I think, including the chief of staff, who I think was the best first pick I've ever seen of a president. I think it's going to be more positive. I think in 2016, frankly, he didn't really expect to be president. I don't think he was really prepared for it. He's not running for office again. I think he could come in with a much better tone, so I think it'll be different. And I think he'll talk about immigration, he'll talk about tariffs, he'll talk about those things. But he's going to highlight, I think he's going to have a more positive tone, and I think that's a good thing for him to do. So I agree with you almost completely.
Oh.
All right, well, we're going to go to maybe the biggest talker in the state right now, which is Governor Mills' budget proposal. Now, Governor Mills is proposing a roughly $11.6 billion 2-year budget. This comes amid warnings that state revenues are leveling off. The plan commits to the governor's core programs like covering 55% of public education costs and keeping the Free Community College initiative going. But it would also cut back some programs in DHHS, including a stipend for child care workers. And the proposal includes raising taxes on goods like tobacco, adult use cannabis, as well as putting tax hikes on video streaming and some ambulance providers. Now, I think one of the most interesting things about the budget proposal is the response from Democrats. Now, I want to read something from Senator Rotundo on the Appropriations Committee. She calls the governor's budget proposals jumping off points to the discussions for the Budget Committee. Senator Mike Tipping of Penobscot County raised some criticism about the cuts. I mean, how far apart are Democratic legislators and the Democratic governor? Ken, I'll start with you.
Well, it is a jumping off point. I mean, that's what it's supposed to be. And it's a good start. Democrats are not wild about it. Republicans less wild about it. And that is what could be expected. It's the starting point of a lot of work. I'm a little surprised at the initial criticism, particularly from Senator Tipping. That was a little more excessive than I would have anticipated. But I'm not surprised by it. And it just means it's going to be months of a lot of negotiation in the legislature.
Lisa, I want to go to the Republican side of things. Republicans came out hard saying we will oppose any budget that has an increase on taxes. That's drawing a line in the sand pretty early. Do you think that changes their ability to insert themselves in the budget, or do you think it's a really good strategic move?
I think it's essential. Maine is already the 4th highest tax state in the nation, and with this new 1% payroll tax that just came on board, we may even be the 3rd, and then add in these new tax increases and fee increases, don't forget, into this budget. We are definitely creeping up there. So somebody has to say no more. And for the governor to say, oh, we need to tighten our belts, things are tough, and then increase the budget by $1.1 billion, in what world is that tightening your budget, your belt? And so I'm surprised the Democrats have a problem. She cut almost nothing in her budget and increased it by $1.1 billion. So, and what she did cut, one of the things so serious that she cut was the mental health resource centers. That was the biggest bipartisan push after the Lewiston shootings, right? Because we know that we need better access to mental health treatment. So there's a lot here to that people are going to kind of dig into the meat. For sure, it's a starting point because it is up to the legislature to decide where money is spent. But I am surprised that the Democrats would have a problem with already this large increase, and I hope the Republicans stick to their guns and say no more increases. I also think the fees, if you notice where some of the fee increases are, they're on fishing, hunting, arborists, and concealed carry permits. It sounds like to me like she's headed pegging those all to northern Maine, because how many people in Portland are getting their concealed carry permit compared to
So it does seem, though, that taking the governor out of the equation for a second, on this proposal, Republicans and Democrats could not seem further apart. Is that fair to say, or what do you think?
I think they're always that. I don't think this is any different than it always is. And I think you put a lot out there because you know it's going to be whittled down, and I think she did that. And I think there's a qualitative difference between income tax, property tax, sales tax. Those are what people think are, oh my God, increase the taxes. Increasing a tax on cigarettes, increasing tax on cannabis, increasing taxes on those things. Maybe streaming would make some people upset. But nobody's going to care if the taxes on cigarettes and cannabis is high. Nobody's going to care about that. I
absolutely care. When you increase taxes on people who use cigarettes, most of those people are addicted, and statistics show that they are also very low income. And if you take someone that's already low income, that's addicted to something they know already isn't good for them, and then you're like, well, okay, we're going to save the backs of our $1.1 billion increase off you, that's wrong.
But at least it's what I'm saying, it's a safe tax for the majority of people in the state, because it's not a popular thing to smoke cigarettes. So it's a safe taxation.
Yeah, but somebody needs to stand up for those people. That it shouldn't be on their backs.
I want to go to maybe the central question of this budget, which is how it's going to be passed. Now, last time around, Democrats used their control of the legislature to pass a budget with a simple majority months before a key deadline. This tactic differs from the usual practice of passing the budget with a 2/3 majority as an emergency bill right before the spending bill needs to take effect to avoid a government shutdown. The last majority budget drew fierce scrutiny from Republicans, but now this is what Governor Mills said about how she wants the next budget passed. Take a listen.
I am holding out every hope that there will be a consensus budget and that there'll be a 2/3 budget which will take effect immediately upon adoption. That makes sense to me.
So, Lisa, I want
I
to.
win the lottery too, by the way.
So, okay, why are we laughing?
Every time she uses almost those words verbatim. She doesn't care if there's a majority budget, and there will most likely be a majority budget. It's happened every time since it was only the first time her first budget was passed, and then she was considering probably that she might have to have something to pay back from voters if there was a majority budget. But since then, it seems not to have been a problem for people. And yeah, I totally expect a majority budget.
But if you are a Republican, and I talked to Trey Stewart, and he kind of expressed a willingness if there are new taxes, then they don't want Republican fingerprints on it. But I mean, how do you want to insert yourself if you're a Republican in budget discussions so you can have some say and kind of work on behalf of what the voters
Absolutely. I know for a fact that the Republican members of the Appropriation Committee will be there to work on that budget every single day up until the very last hour when the Democrats walk in and say, here's the budget, we've signed off, see you later.
And you can want whatever you want. It's not going to happen. I agree with her. It's going to be a majority budget. They're going to give lip service to the Republicans. They're going to do what they want to do anyway, and that's how it's done.
And Ken, I mean, thinking of the Democratic side of things and where they are at the budget at this point, and Republicans saying, we're going to reject no new taxes, how does this change their calculus about what they are willing to propose as they kind of amend and edit the governor's proposal?
They're in the majority. They don't have to care. I mean, they'll give it lip service. They don't have to care. And the point is that they're going to know that they're going to be able to pass a budget, less of a majority than they had beforehand. Right. But they're going to know they can do it if they have to. They'll give it lip service. If they can do a consensus, great. If they can't, the people don't care. They didn't react badly last time. You're absolutely right about that. And so they don't really care.
And going forward, how important is maintaining a relationship between, if you're a legislative Democrat, you have Governor Mills in her last 2 years in office, how important is maintaining that relationship?
For Republicans or Democrats?
For Democratic legislators.
I don't think Democrats have put a whole lot of investment in that because she is a lame duck. She's out in 2 years. They're going to be looking for the next election. So I don't think it's important to them. I really don't.
Wow. Okay. Well, I want to actually end on a proposal from Washington, from Jared Golden. Representative Golden introduced the Build USA Act, establishing a 10% tariff on all imports. This comes as Trump has threatened a 25% blanket tariff on all Canadian exports when he takes office Monday. A tariff is a tax on imports to protect American manufacturing. If you look at American history, Reagan, Clinton, we're all fans of free trade. Now it seems kind of the winds are changing in Washington, or maybe have changed for a while. What do you make of this talk on both sides of the aisle of raising tariffs with the goal of protecting manufacturing, even when some economists warn that could increase costs for consumers? I'll start with you,
I
Ken.
don't believe Trump means that when he'll do tariffs. I think it's a great threat. I'm shocked that Jared is proposing that. As a general rule, tariffs get passed on to consumers. If you charge somebody 10%, they're going to raise the price of the product 10%. We pay for it. And eventually, that increases inflation, makes people angry, and they vote out incumbents. So it's not a good strategy. I don't know why Jared's doing it. I think Donald Trump is using that as leverage and threats to China. You better watch out. You better, we're going to be focused on our manufacturing industry. So it's a great threat, but in reality, it doesn't work. And I think most economists know that.
Lisa?
I agree that it's a great negotiating tool, and I do believe that Trump is using it as such. I don't know why Jared Golden has proposed a 10% across the board, and I do think that we need to reconsider. Yes, if it costs us more up front, but we're losing our jobs and we're less able constantly to buy the things that we were accustomed to having before because we don't have good paying jobs here and we're less self-reliant, that's a problem too. So we have to look at the future good of the country, not only the momentary cost increase. So that's a hard line to draw, and you're right, politicians will pay for it.
Now let's end winners and losers. Lisa, I'll start with you. Who are your winners and losers of the week?
Okay, the big loser of the week for me is the people of Maine, with these tax increases that are coming towards them and being told that they have to tighten the belt, and yet having a budget proposal of $1.1 billion increase. Maine is already, like I said, the fourth or maybe the third highest tax state in the nation. So I think Maine taxes are the losers this week, and the winner is free speech. X started with creating a free speech platform, and then we just saw Meta follow suit. Everywhere, people are companies and also the federal government dropping their DEI initiatives. So again, just this opening up of being able to speak truth, and I'm excited for that. I think that's the winner this week.
Ken?
It pains me to say this, the winner is Donald Trump. You cannot deny the fact that he came back and he's the 47th president of the United States. He ran a great campaign, he won, he's the winner. The loser, I believe, is still democracy, because the oligarchy, the Zuckerberg, who just changed the policy to cater to Donald Trump, we're having our country run by billionaires, and that's not going to help the middle class, and that's going to destroy our democracy if we let it happen.
All right, well, thank you so much for joining us. That's going to do it for this edition of Political Brew.